Perfect. So the session will be recorded. I will send it off later in the week to you all. If you do, towards the end of the session, there will be an open Q&A. If you want to unmute yourself, you're more than welcome to. If you would rather leave your questions in the chat, then one of us can ask them for you. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. What I want the panelists to do is just introduce yourself, if you can. Introduce yourself, tell us about your undergraduate major, some of your campus involvement, your current role now, and your future goals. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat as well. And just unmute yourself to get started.
Okay, I can go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Katie. I am currently a medical student, first-year medical student here at FIU in Miami at the College of Medicine, the MD program. I graduated from UCF in 2019 with a bachelor's in health sciences, and I got a minor in psych. I was pretty involved at UCF. I was involved as a peer mentor for Crear Futuros, the Hispanic Federation. So with first generation students, I also was an anatomy TA. I also served in the, side note, also served in the military for 6 years. So I was a sergeant for that. If anyone's heard of International Medical Outreach, I was very involved with that. I planned 2 medical mission trips for them and also was a donations director. I also was involved in if anyone knows about Dr. Webster through the Health Sciences Department, she has her own nonprofit organization and was very involved with that. So I'm sure there's other things I've done, but I can't really remember.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and go next. And you guys can hear me? Perfect. Okay. So my name is Lori Augusto. My undergrad major at UCF was information technology with a biology minor. And I was a non-traditional student while I was doing my undergrad. And so I was actually working 40 hours a week, which limited as to like how much time I actually got to spend on campus. Though that being said, I was part of the Arboretum and I volunteered a lot there. If you guys haven't checked out the Arboretum, it's absolutely like phenomenal and I had a lot of fun out there. But I ended up graduating and I did a post-baccalaureate program at the University of Missouri. And I actually got accepted here and I'm pursuing my PhD in biological sciences. This is my first year here. And while I wasn't able to like get really involved while I was at UCF, I've taken advantage and I've become very involved at the University of of Missouri. And I'm currently the president of our local SACNAS chapter. My future goals are to graduate with my PhD and hopefully see myself conducting research with the government branch, so potentially the USDA or the CDC. My interest is infectious diseases and host pathogen interactions.
Alrighty, everyone can hear me well? Okay, great. So hi, everyone. My name is Arlette. So I graduated from UCF in fall of 2020, and I did my degree in human communications. And I'm now currently wrapping up my second year at the University of Florida with my master's in student personnel and higher ed. So just working with students and student affairs, I really enjoy it. In terms of future plans, I am going to continue working in the career as a career coach, more so with the College of Business at UF. So I'm super excited for that, having that lined up. And fun fact, I'm at an airport right now, so if it does get a little loud, it's because of that, but I'm super excited to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Ana Garcia. I studied psychology when I was in UCF with a minor in statistics. I was an AAP mentor or peer mentor, and it was so much fun. I was also an McNair scholar and a ramp scholar at some point as well. So a lot of involvement as much as I could. Nowadays, I'm in Nationwide Children's Hospital at Columbus, Ohio, and I'm doing research with CHD or children with congenital heart disease, and is me especially like biobehavioral research. So my interest is like the intersection between biological factors as well as behavioral. And I'm hoping to become a clinical psychologist in the future couple of years. Well, to start my PhD.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so much. So what we want to know first is the focus of today's time is really to kind of explore and debunk what we know about the gap year, or time in between a bachelor's to a master's or a PhD. And so right off the bat, when did you know that you either needed a gap year or some time in between your undergrad and graduate experience? And I'm gonna kind of go in and out between like gap year and gap time, but it's the same thing.
So I can go ahead first. Because I was both studying and working while I was at UCF, I didn't get to do a lot of research under my belt and to make me a really competitive candidate for my PhD. And so the way that I chose to address that, like first I did apply to different graduate programs and I did get denied. But because of AAP and McNair and working with, at that time it was Natalia, her and Michael pointed me in the direction of post-bac opportunities. And post-bac is a post-baccalaureate research program. And you do a year of dedicated research experience to buff up your CV and buff up your actual application package. But I recognized that I needed that gap year or that extra training when I didn't get accepted to graduate school right off the bat. And when I was looking at the requirements, universities really want you to have a robust background.
Similar to Lori, I applied and I didn't got opportunities or acceptance letters. I was pretty open to the idea of doing a postbac just because clinical psychology programs are every day a little more competitive. So most people that I have talked with that were accepted had or needed that gap year to just make themselves a little more competitive as well. The only difference, I guess, with her experience and mine is that I did accept a 2-year program instead of just one, with the hope that I will actually not only get more deep experiences with research, but also to decide where my interests are more focused.
I can go next. So my route's been a little bit more different than others, mainly because of my military background. So I graduated from UCF in 2019, and the time frame to go into medical school is a year-long application process. So if you wanted to get into med school starting this fall in July, August, you had to already been applied 1 year prior. So that was the year that COVID happened, and I ended up being on service throughout that entire year. So I knew automatically I was not going to go. So it's 1 year gap, one gap year down. But I ended up taking an additional gap year when I got off of my service, mainly because I wasn't ready mentally, wasn't basically there mentally or ready to take any sort of examination process. So in that time frame, I had been very involved in school, fortunately, but I mainly just wanted to elevate my application in some sort of way. So I looked for some sort of clinical position in the community, and also was still involved with research. So a lot of students are under the impression that once you graduate, you're disconnected from any sort of undergraduate opportunities with research. But I was still very involved with my faculty that I was in the Department of Health Sciences. So I reached out with one of the professors that I had, during my last semester of being a senior, and she had been working with me throughout these 2 years of my gap year. So she gave me the ability to use that. And it was great because I wasn't even a student through UCF at the time, and I was still getting funding from UCF for my research because I was working with her, and she's UCF faculty. So when in doubt, there always is an opportunity. You just have to ask for it.
And then I think for me, my gap time was actually like 9 months, but I knew I needed that time regardless, just because I wasn't 100% sure, and I wanted to be very intentional about the program I was going to go into. I didn't want to just choose something just to say for the heck of it that I was going to do something immediately after graduation. I just knew myself, and I needed the time to make sure that I was going to go into this experience knowing that this is what I like really wanted, and this is something that I was going to pour like my time and effort into.
I love that. I love all of what you said. So this is kind of like an impromptu question to follow what you're saying. Put yourselves back that semester of you graduating with your bachelor's degree. Some of us knew that our applications were not going to be as competitive, right? And so we needed to pivot. Some of us, the time, we just needed time. So what I want you all to do is give us some advice, some practical advice, or tell us a little bit more about the actual steps that you took the semester that you graduated. Because I think that's something that our students sometimes get nervous about. It's like, yes, I know there's gap time, but I'm about to graduate and I have classes. So what are some practical advice or steps that you can share that you did during that last semester before graduating?
Go ahead, Anna.
I just wanted to say that about around this time of the year, I already kind of knew that I was not accepted anywhere, or at least the top candidates for anything. So at this point, I have already like thought about it. I was like, let's do it. Let's find out another position. And I started to looking into postbac opportunities. And specifically, I knew of a contact that had mentioned an opportunity before. So I contacted back. I was like, hey, so grad school didn't work so far. What can we do in the meantime? And I ended up getting 2 interviews with the programs contacted with her, if that makes sense. And that's how I got this position right now. So I was very lucky, and because I knew someone, I could get into like at least the interview phase for a couple of positions that I wouldn't have known in the meantime. But I just didn't contact that person. I also contacted like my PIs, my mentors. I told everyone I knew. So everyone was sending me opportunities and things that they were getting like through email or through professional organizations, or any way that they knew someone, they will send it to me.
So for me, I graduated in the fall semester of 2019. So I had put in my applications for graduate school, and I didn't find out until like February, kind of like Anna. My top schools had rejected me. And so I had set up spreadsheets in regards to, which are my schools that I would really want to get into. I had a spreadsheet of like master programs, and then I had another spreadsheet of different post-bac programs. And in preparation for each of those applications, I made sure that I had good connections with professors that would write me strong letters of recommendation, and look for help at the writing center, and I had them help me like detail my CV and look over my application package to make sure that it was as good as I could get it, despite not having a very competitive background. But it was a concise package that when I put it in for the post-bac program, I got a call back almost, I think it was like a couple of days, like right after. And that was a phenomenal experience that I've had. And at the University of Missouri, you can do the post-bac program for a year or 2, and I did choose to do 2 years with them.
I can go ahead.
Oh, sorry, keep going. You can
I
go.
don't know. Okay. So for me, so the way that the timeline worked, because I did graduate in fall of 2020, I was home, and this was like because of course the pandemic and whatnot. And I had submitted one application only to grad school, and that was to UF, and I wasn't going to hear back for a good while. So in the meantime, while I was waiting for whether or not that was going to happen, I was prepared to still make the experience that I had working at the local nonprofit that I was working for, like in gearing it towards something that would like help me regardless, because what I wanted to do is to work with college students. And even though I was working with students, they were elementary school or middle school students, but I still asked for opportunities so that it could be, so it could help me, so I could at least have continue something on my resume, or so I could have experiences I could talk about. So it really just took asking the people and my mentors and whatnot to create those experiences for me, to make sure that I wasn't like falling off track per se. Like even if I didn't get into this grad school program or whatnot, then I still would have some kind of experience that would help me still like beneficial for my graduate study. So again, just being intentional with the things that I wanted.
So mine is also kind of very similar to Arlette's, being intentional with what you're doing. So for me, I graduated UCF in the summer of 2019. At this point in time, like based off of my background, I knew I was going to have time before I got into school. So in that time frame, I pretty much thought to myself, what are my downfalls right now that I'm missing? And I need some sort of like mentorship, someone to guide me. So to me, I ended up turning to YouTube. And if anyone goes into grad school, I feel like you can spend easily hours on YouTube trying to look for advice and what to do. And that didn't lead me anywhere. So there was actually one doctor out there that had like a lot of good advice for pre-med students and what they needed to do. So I used that as like a sort of like mentorship. Additionally, a lot of these grad programs, and for me, especially like with med school, a lot of these schools use the same essay prompts, and I'm not the best writer when it comes out there. I'm passionate about what I'm doing, but I'm very poorly articulate when it comes to that. Like now I've gotten better. So I knew that if I could take my time thoroughly without writing and look at previous past years' essay prompts, I could take my time with a lot of the responses and be more intentional with it. Additionally, because I was going to have time, I knew there was going to be experiences that I did in undergrad that I would forget about, that maybe I was really passionate about at the time, but years later, I'm not going to remember the explicit details. So I tried to keep a log of exactly what I did, what was a takeaway that I took from it, and who was present, what impact did I have, what did I get from it? So I feel like that's something you could do now that will help future you out.
I'm just hearing some practical advice, y'all. Take it in. I love that. I love that. For those of you that maybe did your gap time away from home, or even like away from, so those of you that maybe went out of state from where you got your undergrad, can you just tell us about that process and what it was like?
For me, I moved from sunny Florida, Orlando, full of life and entertainment, to Columbia, Missouri. And it is very rural. And it definitely was a culture shock. So I am Puerto Rican, and one of the things that I realized after moving out here was how much I missed like the culture that Orlando has. It's such a diversity. You can go, at least like for me, when I go to the supermarket, it's really nice hearing other people speaking my language, seeing other people that look like me. And the University of Missouri is predominantly white institution, and it was difficult to find like even for cooking, like the different flavorings that I like to use in my food, or like specific vegetables or whatnot. So I had to really rely on like Amazon and my family sending me care packages. But I'm the type of person that I thrive when I'm surrounded by a community. And so what I did was I found other students that were in my type of situation. So with the prep program, they bring in other underrepresented minorities. So I had a cohort of 6 other students, but in addition to having that cohort, I looked for student organizations that reflected what I was looking for. So SACNAS, which is the Society for Advancing Chicanos and Native Americans in the Sciences, played a really, really big part as making me feel at home. We also have another resource here called the Cambio Center, and they specialize in helping international students and underrepresented minorities integrate into Columbia, Missouri, because they understand of how different it is. So that being said, I had to form my own community and also form my own ways of finding entertainment, because I couldn't go down to Universal City Walk or like Disney Springs and just have fun, or all the diversity of like different food places that we have in Orlando. I definitely took that for granted until like I moved out, and I was like, man, I miss living in a big city. There's a little bit of everything here. But it wasn't, I'm thriving now. I have that community, and I do go back to Florida at least like twice a year, and making the best out of it.
Similar to Lori, I moved from Florida, Orlando, and before that from Miami to Columbus, Ohio, which is a city, actually, it's a city, but which it was a kind of surprise. But it's surrounded by rural areas and is not as diverse as most of Florida, or at least South Florida. The food part is still a struggle. There's not plantains in the supermarket, and that is a problem. But besides that, I've been lucky to find like a community as well, not within my center where I study necessarily, or like where I do my research necessarily, because it's a hospital, so it's a little bit different. We don't have like cohorts in the same way. There is some diversity, however, still is different to me and to what I know so far. But I think it's very important to be flexible, to try to adapt to wherever you are, try to find the fun and the different things within different cultures. And I was lucky to meet friends outside of the hospital and the program, and have a little, in my case, Hispanic community outside that I can contact and have food with and go and explore and do stuff that I really like. But it's been really, really important to find your people.
That kind of leads me to just another general question for everyone. Because it sounds like those were some of the challenges you faced. So for other panelists, what were some of the challenges that you faced during your gap time?
For me, I will definitely say, so like I didn't move out of Florida. As soon as I graduated, well, didn't actually graduate. Once spring break happened and I never came back, I went back home to my family in Naples. And the hardest part is not being surrounded by like your supporters. And it's not to say that my supporters weren't there like in person and whatnot. Like I know, for example, like Raquel was one of my supporters. Like I know I could still text her, but it just wasn't the same as like still being on the same campus, the same building, the same hustle and bustle. And so during my gap time, like it honestly, it took a lot out of me personally to say, Arlette, you have to do this. Like you can't, like there was no longer that reliance on like that you have your people like right next to you. And it's not to say that like my family wasn't my people. My family was my people and still supported me. But the so different about being at the academic environment and still being in that academic mindset to just say like this is what I'm going to do. So and it just goes back to like I had to make that place that I was working at, that nonprofit, I had to make them my supporters. I had to make the students my supporters, like the little kids and whatnot, and say like I still am going to make this experience and gear it towards something that will help me. But that was really rough, is just not being like at school anymore, not feeling like I'm at school, even though I know I'm still working to go to school, but I'm home and I'm in a virtual environment. So that was probably the toughest challenge. We made it happen, but that was rough.
Yeah, I'm 1000% on the same train as Arlette. For me, I'm very much like I was 24/7 in the UCF library, especially since now it's beautiful. But not having that capability, especially like moving back to like your home area, you don't have that. So I guess for me, I'm very practical when it comes to those things. I know I can't do what I need to in my room, or like financially, you might not be able to. Like you have to go to work. Like you need to pay bills. You need to do certain things. So telling myself like, oh, I'm going to do this was not going to work out. So I had to literally get out pen and paper, get a calendar, be realistic. How many hours can I dedicate this week? From this time to this time, it's like going to be my additional job. Sorry, guys, like my phone's going over there. This is what I'm doing. And if I didn't set those certain boundaries and limitations, like I was going to go nowhere with it. If it meant like I had to go to my local, like go on my, like on Google, like local libraries, I was not going to make it if I didn't make that effort. So I feel like saying things out into the open can only get you so far. Unless you make those habits become reality, you're not going to be able to get anywhere.
I also struggle with the part of how to continue the academic part when you're not in academic environment anymore, and how to make it a priority, and how to work a 40 hours job full time, and as well still working on your goals. Right now, what is working for me is staying a little longer in the office, like clock out, do whatever I need to do, and just using my desk for diary studying or for looking into programs. And just like 20 minutes sometimes is everything I can do some days, and that's not the ideal, but it's better to have something every day instead of like where can you put like 4 hours, 6 hours. It's more difficult sometimes.
So what I'm hearing is being very realistic with yourself and keep yourself accountable, right? And creating kind of that environment. Okay. Some of you kind of touched on family and support systems. So my next question is actually, speaking of family and maybe parents, loved ones, sometimes the expectations of others close to us is immediately to pursue that graduate degree, right? I don't know about you, but between my bachelor's and my master's, if I would have told my mother that I wanted to take a gap time, she would have looked at me crazy. And I think that sometimes that's what happens. And so for you all, how did you explain your alternative path or plans to your loved ones, your family, even your friends, right? How was that?
I can kick us off. So I will say for me, the conversation with my parents was like really, really hard. Because I think, and I think it also roots from, hold up, maybe I'll just wait until this speaker stops.
Does anybody else want to chime in to give Arlette some time?
It's done now if we're ready. But yeah, so the conversation was really hard with my family, because especially with my mom, because I think they come from that like immigrant mindset where it's like, you're graduated, why don't you have a full-time job yet? And like, it was hard for me to explain that to her and just be like, this isn't how that's gonna work anymore. And I think it didn't take until I actually got an acceptance letter from UF for her to fully understand that, like, okay, so this is an alternate place. Like I was there and I was still working, but I wasn't doing like what she in her mind thought was like the American dream, where it's like as soon as you graduate, you have a full-time job and you're out and ready and going. But it did take some time. And I think once that happened, once I got the acceptance, once she fully understood that this is like a program that's going to take like time and whatnot, and I just needed some time to just gather myself, she understood. But I think it's also just like having that conversation just with the way that some of the mentalities might differ. But I will say it was a difficult one. And again, just I think a common theme for me was like, it just takes time. Like it really just takes time for like her and like my family to see exactly what it meant. But overall, they were supportive.
Yeah, I have to agree that the conversation of like pursuing or taking a gap year, and the reason why to help get trained and be more competitive so that I could go into graduate school. I could tell that they were frustrated because I could tell that they wanted me to be, as Arlette was saying, in the job force already, working and being a professional. But my vision for my future career requires, I want to be a research scientist, and I need that training. And adding more time to them, it felt like I was wasting time, because how they see it is the corporate world is always marching forward. There's always someone younger, has more energy to take that position, and their concern comes out of a good place that they want the best for me, but they weren't able to see the big picture at that time. And it wasn't until that I got my acceptance letter for the University of Missouri to pursue my PhD, and explaining to them, this prep program, it's a job. I'm getting paid for it. Me pursuing my PhD, I'm getting paid for it. This is a job, but the job is I'm training. It looks like I'm a student, but I'm training to be an awesome researcher. And now they've kind of have a good grasp on it. Now the nuances of a PhD, they still don't understand. I'm pretty sure they say that I'm doing like astroscience or something, even though I've told them it's microbiology many a times. But I think as Arlette was saying, it's that generational gap where back, at least for my parents, they had to immediately get a job to start securing a foundation for their family and get settled and start working. And that image has changed between generations, I think.
My parents had a different perspective. Like, they understood that I needed to go to a PhD program to achieve my goals. But for their mindset, it was like, okay, if you have to do this, why aren't you doing it right now? And I was like, well, you need to get accepted, and it's very competitive. And it came down to explaining the percentages of people that actually get into those programs. Like, it was like a 0.1%, like a 1%, 2% of applicants that got in, and I had to explain, like, I have done a lot, but I'm definitely not the 1% of 500 people. And that's okay. And that doesn't mean that I haven't done my job or that I'm not a good student. I just need more time. I need to prepare more. I need to make myself more competitive and show others that I am ready to take this path. And eventually, I think it was good for them. They were just worried about, like, oh, if you're studying, then you take a gap and you get used to not studying. And then you have to come back to studying. And how is that transition? And I can't say that it will be easy because I don't know. I haven't gone through it just yet. But I think I can do it. And it's part of my goals. So they have been supportive with it.
So for me, I luckily, kind of like how Anna said, my family was very supportive. They knew that this is a passion of mine. They know that I accomplish what I say I'm going to accomplish, so that I was going to do it no matter what. More so tough conversations where, for me, I'm very goal centered and I have to space out certain time frames. So with my family, especially living at home during that time frame, prepping to get into grad school, a lot of the times I had spaced out for myself to like study for entry exams and whatnot wasn't taken seriously. So I would be like, hey guys, like this Saturday, like you will not see me. I'm going to the library, I'm doing my thing. And they'll be like, oh, but I need you to do this. I need you to do X, Y, Z, or you have to help with this. So some of that wasn't taken as seriously, and that was kind of difficult. Another thing would be like if I had really emphasized to them how much I needed to do, how much I needed to prepare, if they saw me take a break or have like a chill day, they'd look at me like I was crazy and be like, I thought you said you had to do XYZ. So those were some tough conversations because they're not in my shoes. So they don't know that I mentally needed a break some days. And they just kind of, like how everybody else was saying, expect you to already be in that role that you said you were going to do.
Yeah, so it sounds like there were moments of just solitude, in different ways, and a sense of like lack of knowledge of what this is really going to look like, and yes, I hear you all. Okay, so my next question, so students, feel free to put your questions in the chat unless you want to unmute yourself. Some of our panelists do have to run at 4 o'clock, so I want to be very mindful of their time. But my next question is, what would you say were some some of your favorite parts of your gap time, you know, some times that you've appreciated, you've enjoyed. Share that part.
I can go ahead. I enjoyed being home. I think I really, really enjoyed being home just because I also realized that if I was going to go pursue my master's and if this was going to happen, that I would have moved out and I wouldn't be a full-time stay-at-home daughter anymore for like ever. And so I think I really appreciated that, just being, because I'm really, really close to my family. And so being around my family and being able to still take some time and just spend time with my siblings, no matter like how little that time might be, I really appreciated that. And that's some time I'm never going to get back. But that's also some time that I'm forever going to cherish, is that I did do that.
I appreciated taking a break from studying and finals and all the stress that comes with applying to grad school and then graduating and all that. I really appreciated taking a break. I had the opportunity to go out of the country and travel a little bit and then to come back and now have a full-time job. And both of those things have been very like refreshing and another perspective. And I feel like I'm ready to go back to study now.
So for me, I moved out of Florida for the first time, and I was living on my own without any roommates in a brand new like city, a brand new state. And I wasn't working like I used to be a pharmacy technician, and I wasn't working or dealing with customers. And so getting to be dedicate myself to my research during my post-bac and that gap year, I got to focus on what made me happy and kind of like understand, okay, who is, you know, Lori. Lots of introspection happened, and like when I wasn't working and when I was actually having fun. And so you know, discovering that I like to go walking on trails. I didn't know that about me because I didn't get the opportunity while I was working and studying. And so like finding new passions and really connecting with myself has been phenomenal. And the program itself and like the department that I was with and I'm still a part of, getting to really participate in that community and understand like those resources, those people are there for you, those mentors are there for you. And that has been like the best part of my gap year, just connecting with people and really enjoying the process.
For me, kind of like a little bit of what everybody said. But yeah, really just taking a break. I feel like you've been a student for so long, and at least for me, if I go 3 days and I haven't done something related to school stuff, I feel like something's missing. So kind of to explore that path of life that's not related to school is really interesting. It's fun. You kind of try new things to eat, like new people that maybe you said that you were gonna text back like 2 months ago, and like you can finally text them back now, like and actually make plans. So it's very introspective in that.
Okay, I think for our knights, our students, but I also am thinking of Anna, right? So Anna will be applying, and she is gonna get into a PhD. So from the three of you, what advice would you give for someone that is in their gap time and is transitioning into the graduate degree? So how was it? Okay, you took your time. Obviously, you were being proactive, but now you have to go back into the school mindset. What are some strategies or some pieces of advice that you could give, like someone like Anna?
So for me to kind of get back into the school mindset, I didn't take any classes during my prep program. It was just like dedicated to research, but kind of on my own time. And as Anna had previously said, like getting back into the school mindset, it's a little bit tricky. And so one thing that I've figured out, at least that works great for me, is making like a priority list and organizing what are the things that I need to accomplish that day, that week, and maybe like that month. So I am working with my professor to do a independent, like an IDP, which is an individualized like development plan. I forgot what exactly it stands for, but it puts into perspective what is it that I want to accomplish and gives me direction. And with that, we also talk about strategies to study and keep focused on the subject that you're doing research on, but also your classes, and making sure you keep up with everything. Because once you get into grad school, you are juggling every single day.
Anyone else would like to offer their perspective?
I guess something for me is, in addition to the prioritized plan, the list. I think that's a great idea. I still do that now all the time. Additionally, for me, is just, especially if I've been kind of sleeping in or something like that, I feel like just training yourself to kind of wake up a little bit earlier each and every day, to at least a set time that you know that when you're in that program, you're gonna have to already be in the course, or you're gonna have to already be doing something by that time. So if I can train myself to already be kind of awake and moving, whether that's like reading a book or like going to get some exercise, but at least being awake, that's helped me to try to already get my mind, body, soul ready.
Okay, awesome. And so I'm just looking at the time. We do have a few more minutes. I do want to let the panelists know that we're going to stay extra 5 minutes or 2 minutes to take a screenshot photo. But I think I'm going to go ahead and give our final question, unless a student has a question that they want to offer. But my final question is, like, what is your final piece of advice that you like to share with students that are considering their gap year or even planning for their gap year? What's that final piece?
To be flexible, to be open to new experiences. There's many ways to get to the same goal, and we can all make it there, but we need sometimes a different path than someone else that you know.
For me, it would be, it's extremely easy to compare yourself to everybody else, especially your friends posting on social media, seeing their successes, what they're doing, their income and how is it looking, the dinners they're eating. But it's very easy to fall into that. And just as it is, it's very easy for you to take a moment, sit down, make a very thorough decision into making a gap year happen. And that could be the gap year that could have put you on top and saved you, and future you would have thanked you.
I think for me, it's like, just remember it's okay to rest, but also remember to be intentional about the time that you're using.
Yeah, to echo Arlette, be mindful of recognizing if you need a gap year, because you don't want to burn out, especially after doing school for 4 years and diving into your PhD. That's an additional 4 to 5 years. It's okay to like take a gap, and actually universities they appreciate the students that do take a gap year. Sorry. Because they'll ask about it, and in your answer you can be honest with them. And I've heard from like administration, they appreciate like very mature, thoughtful answers as to why those students recognize that they needed a gap year. And it's that maturity, that type of mentality, that makes a student successful in their PhD. And so yeah, be honest with yourself. Don't get burned out. And as Anna said, there are multiple ways to get to your PhD. It's not just one size cuts it all, or one size fits everyone. Sorry about that.
No, I'm wonderful. I think that's fantastic. So, some takeaways that I'm going to reiterate from what you all said were, getting connected, right? While you're in undergrad, to be proactive in that time, but not just getting connected with your network, but communicating, right? Letting people know that you're planning on taking this time to continue to develop yourself. Let your faculty know, let your mentors. Another thing is being proactive in the gap time. I always like to say, as long as we have an intentional gap time, that's like my thing. You want to make sure you have your plan to keep you accountable, and then reflection and mentorship. I love that. Perfect. So I just want to go ahead. We did have one question in the chat about SACNES. And so SACNES is an amazing, actually, Lori, if you want to go ahead and tell a little bit more about SACNES, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I said it was the Society for Advancing Chicanos and Native Americans in the Sciences. It is a national organization, and it covers the breadth of undergrads all the way to postdocs and faculty members. And so it's an organization that really highlights underrepresented minorities and provides networking opportunities as well as professional development opportunities through their website and through your local chapters. So if I think UCF has a local SACNES chapter, so definitely get in contact with them. But they, at least like my chapter here at Missouri, we host professional development opportunities, and how to best interview for your PhD, and we'll do mock interviews. We'll also do reviews of your CV, and the one highlight is there is a national conference that you can attend and present your poster or do an oral presentation to help prepare you for that next step. And you can put in your abstract and apply, and you can sometimes win travel awards. And so the last SACNES conference was actually held in Puerto Rico, and that's where I connected with Raquel and Michael, and I got to catch up with them and let them know as to where I am now and how much this organization really has helped me connect with the community as well as with the university.
Awesome. On behalf of Academic Advancement Programs, thank you so much to the four of you. I'm honestly so inspired by just the amount of dedication, effort, and just energy that you all are putting in. So thank you so much on behalf of AAP, on behalf of the students that are here. Students, please feel free to connect with Academic Advancement Programs on our social media. You can always email us any questions that you have about graduate school preparation at aap@ucf.edu. It looks like some of our panelists are going to drop their emails on the chat, which we kindly appreciate. Remember, y'all, they also are moving and grooving, so be kind. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Like I said, please stay connected with Academic Advancement Programs for all things graduate school prep. Thank you so much, everybody. That's it for today. And then panelists, if you can just stay 2 more minutes, that's all I ask. We will stop recording.